The gym was nearly empty that evening, just a few stragglers finishing their workouts. In the corner, Bayani wiped down the mats with methodical precision, his janitorial uniform slightly worn from years of use. He'd been cleaning this martial arts gym for almost 3 years now, always arriving after the last class ended, always leaving before the first students arrived in the morning. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the training floor. The smell of sweat and rubber mats filled the air, a scent Bayani had grown accustomed to over countless nights of solitary work. He moved from section to section with practiced efficiency, his mop gliding across the surface in smooth, even strokes. Most people wouldn't think twice about the man cleaning their gym. To them, he was invisible, just another face in the background of their fitness journey. Trent, a third-degree black belt and one of the gym's most accomplished instructors, was wrapping up his private training session. He just finished a grueling 2 hours of pad work and was feeling particularly confident. His muscles burned in that satisfying way that comes after a productive workout, and his technique had been sharp tonight. Everything was flowing, every combination crisp and powerful. As he toweled off, he noticed Bayani working quietly in the corner, the same way he had every night for years. Trent had exchanged pleasantries with him before, the occasional nod or brief greeting, but had never really paid much attention beyond that. Tonight, though, something was different. Something about the way Bayani moved caught Trent's attention. There was an efficiency to his movements, a certain balance and awareness that seemed unusual for someone pushing a mop. The way he pivoted on his feet, the way his weight shifted smoothly from one leg to the other, the way his shoulders stayed level and relaxed even as he worked. Trent had seen it before, but never really paid attention until now. It was the kind of body awareness that came from years of training, the kind of movement economy that couldn't be faked or learned from a YouTube video. Trent had spent enough time around elite athletes to recognize the signs, even in something as mundane as janitorial work. On a whim, Trent walked over. He gestured toward the mats, then toward Bayani, making a sparring motion with his hands and a friendly smile. It was meant to be lighthearted, maybe even a little patronizing. Just a fun way to end the evening. Perhaps give the janitor a story to tell. Maybe it would be good for a laugh, a brief distraction before heading home. Bayani looked up, surprised. His expression was neutral, but there was something in his eyes that Trent couldn't quite read. He shook his head politely, gesturing at his cleaning supplies, his uniform trying to decline respectfully. His hands moved in a universal gesture of refusal, a slight smile on his face that seemed to say he appreciated the offer but couldn't accept. But Trent persisted, his smile widening, clearly thinking this would be harmless entertainment. He waved off Bayani's concerns, pointing at some spare gear in the corner. "Come on, just one round," he seemed to say with his gestures. Nothing serious, just a bit of light sparring to end the night. What could it hurt? The few remaining gym members started to notice the interaction. A couple of them paused their cool-down stretches, curious about what was happening. One pulled out his phone, sensing that something interesting might be about to unfold. After a long moment of hesitation, Bayani slowly set down his mop. He looked at it for a second, as if saying goodbye to the simplicity of his evening routine. Something shifted in his demeanor as he walked toward the gear. His movements became more deliberate, more purposeful. The shuffle of a tired worker transformed into the precise steps of someone who knew exactly how their body moved through space. He pulled on the sparring gloves with a familiarity that made Trent's smile falter slightly. The way Bayani adjusted the Velcro straps, the way he tested the fit with a few practice movements, the way he rolled his shoulders and neck to loosen up. These weren't the actions of someone putting on gloves for the first time, or even the 100th time. This was muscle memory built over thousands of hours. They faced each other on the mat. Trent bounced on his toes, loose and confident, throwing a few playful jabs to set the tone. This was just for fun after all. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd been doing this for 15 years, someone who'd won regional tournaments and taught hundreds of students. His footwork was textbook perfect, his hands high and tight. Bayani stood still, his stance wider than expected, his weight distributed perfectly. His hands came up in a guard that looked natural, practiced, refined. But there was something different about it, something that didn't quite match the traditional stance Trent was used to seeing. It was slightly lower, more mobile, with a fluidity that suggested adaptability rather than rigid form. The small crowd that had gathered grew quiet. Even the people who'd been stretching had stopped to watch. There was an energy in the air now, a tension that everyone could feel but nobody could quite explain. Trent threw the first real combination, a quick 1-2 followed by a low kick. Standard stuff, nothing serious. The kind of combination he'd thrown 10,000 times in training and competition. His punches were fast and accurate, his kick properly chambered and executed with good form. Bayani's response was immediate. He slipped the punches with minimal movement, his head moving just inches to the side, the kind of efficient defense that saved energy and maintained position. He checked the kick effortlessly, his shin meeting Trent's with a solid thud that echoed in the quiet gym. And then before Trent could reset, Bayani countered with a lightning-fast jab that snapped Trent's head back. It wasn't hard, but it was precise, perfectly timed, and faster than Trent expected. The glove had barely seemed to move before it was already returning to guard position. The speed was remarkable, but more than that, the timing was perfect. Bayani had waited for the exact moment when Trent was committed to his kick, when his weight was shifted and his hands were slightly out of position. Trent reset, his smile gone now, replaced with focus. The playful energy evaporated, replaced by genuine concentration. He pressed forward with more intent, throwing a more complex combination, a jab to set up distance, a cross to the body, a hook upstairs, then a quick step to the side to create an angle. It was a combination he'd used successfully in dozens of sparring sessions and competitions. Bayani moved like water, deflecting, redirecting, creating angles that shouldn't have been there. Every counter came from unexpected places, every strike finding its mark with surgical precision. He wasn't just defending, he was controlling the entire exchange. When Trent threw the body shot, Bayani's elbow was already there to intercept it. When Trent threw the hook, Bayani had already stepped into a range where the punch lost its power, and his counters came from angles Trent didn't see, strikes that materialized from his blind spots and landed cleanly before he could react. Within 30 seconds, Trent realized he was in trouble. Within a minute, he was fighting just to keep up. Bayani wasn't showboating or trying to embarrass him. There was no taunting, no excessive movement, no wasted energy. He was simply operating on a different level entirely, the way a grandmaster plays chess against an amateur. Every move was efficient, purposeful, and devastatingly effective. The Filipino janitor's footwork was impeccable, his timing supernatural. He made Trent, a decorated black belt with tournament wins and years of teaching experience, look like an enthusiastic beginner. Every attack Trent launched was neutralized before it developed. Every opening he tried to create was already closed. It was as if Bayani could read Trent's intentions before Trent himself fully committed to them. Trent tried everything in his arsenal. He attempted feints, trying to draw reactions and create openings. Bayani didn't bite. He tried changing levels, mixing high and low attacks. Bayani adjusted seamlessly. He tried changing rhythm, adding pauses and explosive bursts. Bayani's timing adjusted to match, always one step ahead. The crowd around the mat had grown. Everyone in the gym had stopped what they were doing. Phones were out now, multiple people recording from different angles. The atmosphere had completely changed. What had started as a casual, almost joke-like challenge had transformed into something else entirely. People were whispering to each other, trying to figure out who this janitor was. Then it happened. Trent, frustrated and determined to land something significant, threw a spinning back kick. It was one of his signature techniques, something he'd landed countless times in competition. He'd won matches with this kick. The setup was perfect, the execution textbook. His hips rotated smoothly, his supporting leg pivoted correctly, and the kick came around with significant power. Bayani didn't just evade it. In a movement that seemed impossible in its speed and precision, he caught Trent's leg mid-spin. One hand secured the ankle, the other controlled the knee. Before Trent could even process what was happening, Bayani swept the standing leg and controlled Trent's descent to the mat so smoothly it looked choreographed. There was no slam, no hard impact. Bayani guided Trent down with complete control, demonstrating not just superior skill, but also restraint and respect. In competition, it would have been a decisive finish, the kind of move that ends fights. The gym erupted in gasps and murmurs. Someone let out a low whistle. The sound of phone cameras clicking and recording filled the space. They both stood up. Trent was breathing hard, sweat pouring down his face, his chest heaving. His legs felt heavy, his arms tired despite the exchange lasting only a couple of minutes. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the sobering realization of what had just happened. Bayani looked the same as when they started, barely winded, his expression unchanged. His breathing was calm and controlled, his posture relaxed. There wasn't a hint of smugness or pride in his demeanor, just quiet professionalism. The gym had fallen completely silent now. The few remaining gym members had stopped what they were doing entirely. They'd gathered at the edge of the mat, phones out, recording. Nobody could believe what they were watching. Some of them had trained with Trent, knew his skill level, had seen him dominate sparring sessions and win tournaments. To see him so thoroughly outclassed by the janitor was almost impossible to process. Trent, to his credit, bowed deeply. It was a sincere bow, not just a formality. He held it for a long moment, a genuine gesture of respect from someone who just learned a humbling lesson. Bayani returned the bow with equal respect, the gesture smooth and natural, ingrained from years of training. Then he quietly began removing the sparring gear, his movements unhurried and methodical. As he walked back to his cleaning supplies, Trent finally found his voice. The question came out quietly, almost reverently. "Who are you? Where did you train?" The words hung in the air, everyone in the gym leaning in to hear the answer. Bayani paused, then pulled out his phone. His hands, still steady despite the sparring session, scrolled through his photo gallery until he found what he was looking for. He showed Trent a photo. In it, a younger Bayani stood on a podium, wearing a Philippine national team uniform, a gold medal around his neck gleaming in the flash of the camera. The text below identified him as a 3-time Southeast Asian Games champion in kickboxing and a former professional fighter with a record of 28 wins, 2 losses. Trent took the phone, his hands trembling slightly as he zoomed in on the image. The other gym members crowded around, everyone trying to get a look. Someone started searching for Bayani's name online, pulling up old fight footage, articles about his championship runs, highlights from his professional career. The person found a video. They turned up the volume. Everyone watched as a younger Bayani dismantled opponents with the same efficiency and precision they just witnessed. Knockout after knockout, technical masterclasses, performances that had made him a legend in Southeast Asian combat sports circles. Bayani's story unfolded through hushed conversations and shared phone screens. He'd retired after a career-ending knee injury 8 years ago, a torn ACL that never quite healed properly, damage to the meniscus that left him unable to compete at the highest level anymore. The injury had happened during a championship fight, ironically one he'd been winning handily before his knee gave out in the 3rd round. He'd immigrated to the United States for better medical care and the promise of a fresh start. But like many athletes whose bodies could no longer compete at the highest level, he'd found that his skills didn't easily translate to civilian career paths. No college degree, no work experience outside of fighting, limited English when he first arrived. He'd found work where he could, taking whatever jobs were available. The gym had been a way to stay close to the sport he loved, even if only as the person who cleaned the mats where others trained. He'd accepted the position knowing he'd have to watch others do what he could no longer do. But the alternative, complete separation from martial arts, had seemed worse. At least here, he could smell the familiar scent of the gym, hear the sound of gloves hitting pads, feel connected to the community that had defined his entire life. He'd kept quiet about his past because he saw no point in dwelling on what was behind him. He wasn't that person anymore. He was Bayani the janitor, not Bayani the champion. Besides, he'd learned that people often treated you differently when they knew about past glory, and he preferred the simplicity of being invisible, of just doing his work and going home. Trent stood speechless, the phone in his hand, looking between the photo and the man in the janitorial uniform. His mind was racing, trying to reconcile the humble, quiet janitor he'd known for 3 years with the elite athlete standing before him. How many times had he walked past Bayani without really seeing him? How many conversations had he cut short, never thinking the janitor might have something to teach him? The other gym members crowded around, equally stunned. Some were apologizing for never asking about Bayani's background. Others were excitedly talking about techniques they'd just seen, already planning to search for more of his old fights online. The energy in the gym had completely transformed. Bayani simply smiled, a gentle expression that carried no resentment or bitterness about his changed circumstances. He pocketed his phone, picked up his mop, and went back to work. He had 3 more rooms to clean before his shift ended. The mats weren't going to clean themselves, and tomorrow morning, the early class would arrive, expecting everything to be spotless. Champions or janitors, the work still needed to be done. And Bayani had learned long ago that there was dignity in all honest labor. He moved to the next section of mats, his mop resuming its steady rhythm. But now people watched him differently. They saw the precision in every movement, the way he never wasted energy, the way he moved with the same efficiency in cleaning that he'd shown in fighting. Trent never looked at Bayani the same way again. More importantly, he never looked at anyone the same way again. The janitor had taught him a lesson more valuable than any technique or strategy, more important than any competition victory. Everyone you meet knows something you don't. Everyone has a story, a past, experiences that shape them in ways you can't see from the surface. And sometimes, the most extraordinary people are hiding in the most ordinary places, wearing the most unassuming uniforms, doing the work that others overlook. The video from that night went viral within 48 hours. The footage, captured from multiple angles by various gym members, showed the complete sparring session in stunning clarity. The comment section exploded with people sharing similar stories, talking about underestimated individuals they'd encountered, debating the techniques Bayani used. The video was shared across martial arts forums, Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and Twitter feeds. Within a week, it had accumulated over 5 million views. Bayani's phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from former teammates who'd lost touch over the years, old coaches who wanted to reconnect, and media outlets requesting interviews. Sports networks wanted to do feature stories. Podcast hosts wanted him as a guest. Other gyms were reaching out, asking if he'd be interested in teaching seminars. The gym owner, a savvy businessman who recognized the opportunity, offered him a position as an instructor, tripling his salary. The publicity from the viral video was bringing new members to the gym every day, people specifically asking about classes with the legendary janitor. Bayani accepted, but only part-time. He kept his janitorial job too, a decision that confused many people, but made perfect sense to those who understood him. When asked why by a local news reporter who'd come to do a story, he said through a translator that cleaning kept him humble, kept him grounded, reminded him that there was honor in all work, regardless of its perceived status. Besides, he'd grown fond of the quiet hours after everyone else had gone home, the meditation of repetitive tasks, the satisfaction of transforming chaos into order. There was a peace in that work that competition had never given him, a different kind of fulfillment. Fighting had been about proving himself, about winning, about the roar of crowds and the weight of medals. Cleaning was about service, about creating spaces for others to grow, about the quiet satisfaction of a job well done with no one watching. He learned more about himself in his years as a janitor than in all his years as a champion. Trent still trained at the gym every evening, but now after his sessions ended, he always stayed to help Bayani clean the mats. They worked side by side in comfortable silence. Teacher and student, black belt and janitor, both understanding that the labels meant nothing at all. Sometimes they would pause to discuss technique, Bayani demonstrating subtle adjustments to transform, sharing insights from his years at the highest level of competition. Other students started staying late too, not just to train with Bayani, but to help with the cleaning. The gym developed a new culture, one where every task was valued, where the person mopping the floor was treated with the same respect as the head instructor. Members started introducing themselves to all the gym staff, learning their names, their stories, treating everyone with dignity regardless of their role. Bayani's story spread beyond the gym, beyond the martial arts community. It became a reminder that carried weight in an age of instant judgments and social media personas. The video was shared in motivational contexts, used in presentations about not judging others, referenced in articles about the dignity of work and the complexity of human experience. And every night, after the last student left and the cameras were put away, Bayani would finish cleaning the mats with the same care and attention he'd always shown. The viral fame would eventually fade. The reporters would move on to the next story, but the work would remain. And in that work, Bayani had found something that championship belts and international recognition had never given him: peace, purpose, and a quiet pride that needed no audience to validate it. The mats gleamed under the fluorescent lights, ready for tomorrow's warriors. And in the corner, a champion pushed his mop, whistling softly to himself, content in the knowledge that he had nothing left to prove to anyone, least of all himself.